going. All righty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Mumbo Jumbo Community Conversations. My name is Chinyelu, a longtime member of the Kepler community, and I will be helping to host the conversation today. We are joined by Damon Taziyah, Deb Trocha, and Jane Ellery, talking a little bit about cooperatives, the advantages of cooperatives, how to build cooperatives. But we'll get into more of that when they all have an opportunity to introduce themselves. For anyone that's new to the space, we always open any of our community meetings with a brief check-in, just so that we can all kind of be aware of each other's like state of being, sensitive to each other's wellness. So that check-in is typically a number that's supposed to describe your mood or your feeling, a color that's supposed to describe your mood or your feeling, and then we typically have a check-in, like an icebreaker question as well. So does anybody have a good icebreaker, not to put anybody on the spot, but does anybody have a good icebreaker question that we might incorporate into our check-in for today? I have one, but no takers. That's just fine. Alrighty. Check-in question that I heard today in one of my other meetings was, what was your favorite board game growing up? I think we can go with that. I'll start. I'm feeling like a green 7 today. And I think when I was first asked this question today, I said Mousetrap. It's that game where you have to like run the ball through like the ball maze or whatever. But somebody else said Scrabble. And I also really like Scrabble. And my grandparents really like Scrabble, and my parents really like Scrabble. So I think for this time, I'm going to say Scrabble as well. And I'll pass it to Damon.
Thanks, Chen. I am a same color, topaz, which is my birthstone. 8, and earlier I said left, right, center. It's not a board game, so I'm gonna go ahead and steal checkers, and I'll pass it to April.
I am a red 10. I'm trying to think of a different one. So this morning I said, Guess Who, that game, Guess Who. So I actually really, really loved Candyland. Like, I think it was like, it's such a simple game, but I loved those beautiful, like delicious pictures of the candy, and that it was like this little kingdom, I don't know. I really love that, that game. All right, I will pass it to Jane.
Excellent. Thank you, April. I'm a red because it's so hot today, and I'll go with a 9, feeling pretty good. I think I'd be a 10 if it weren't so hot. I'm still growing up, and one of the games that I love to play now is called Sequence. So my husband and I still play pretty regularly. Deb, I'll pass it to you.
Okay, well, I am a 9.5. I'm in a much better spot than I was earlier in the week. Things are starting to coalesce and come together. Color aquamarine, that's my birthstone as well. I was going to go with the blue, but I like aquamarine. I like 2 different games, Clue and Monopoly. I liked empire building, but I was the oldest child, and I always felt sorry for my brothers when I was beating them. So I would pretend like I didn't see them when they were landing on a property with, 14 houses on it, and they owed me a bunch of money. So, Pambana.
There's a lot. We can't hear you, Pambana.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So hi everyone. Sunlight White, 8.5. And I didn't really play board games as a kid. We were more street games, football, basketball, red light, green light, all that kind of stuff. And I'll pass it to Cassandra.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm a little sorry, I'm a little frustrated right now. I'm a little busy. Yeah, I guess my color would be yellow today. I'm actually making some shea butter, so it's a nice yellow color. So I'll pick that. And I'm feeling about a 10 right now because it turned out really well. So I'm about 10 right now. And I will pass it to, let's see. Has April gone yet?
M left. Imhotep.
M still has to go.
Okay, so I'll pass it to M.
Muted.
M, hmm.
He went to the restroom and it was my job to get his phone hooked up because it was about to die. So when he gets back, I'll pass it to him. I'm a yellow 10. And what was the question?
Same as from earlier today. What was your favorite board game coming up?
Oh, it was checkers. It was checkers. And you can always play checkers. I mean, dominoes is good. When I said dominoes this morning, I said, but I don't know. Checkers is pre-chess, I guess. Em teases me sometimes. He said, listen, you're a checker player. I play chess. And I always tell him, well, you have to have strategy for checkers. So, but he's not back yet. So I pass it on to whoever didn't go yet while I was trying to hook this phone up.
I think you were the last one for now. So maybe while we wait on M to get back and do his check-in, Jeru to join in, whenever he makes it, we can let our speakers introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what they do and what they're going to talk about today. Do a little introduction. Maybe starting with Damon.
Thanks, Chin. Damon Taziyah. We us pronouns. Start that from Bana.
We, us, our.
We us are. Thank you. We us are.
Yeah.
And long time
Here you go,
Kepler
buddy.
fellow. And I'm gonna stop so M can do his check-in.
We're doing the check-in, your favorite board game. You'll need to get a little closer. This is a very short connector. Yeah, your favorite board game again.
Oh, color lime green, a 9.
Hey, Paulette, we can't see him. If you could tilt the screen a little bit more. There
Lime
you go.
green, 9. Chess. Pass it somewhere. Just came from the restroom, so I'm clueless.
Yeah, you're last.
Oh,
Thanks. Everybody checked in. Damon Taziyah, part of Kepler, work in the alchemy space, which is about community wealth building. All of Kepler is about community wealth building, but we try to be a little bit more forward in alchemy about it. And also on the board, and currently really steeped in research, ideation around cooperative development or collective economics, self-reliance, sustainability, et cetera, et cetera. And that road has led us to developing a great relationship with the ICDC, Indiana Cooperative Development Center, which is Deb and Jane, who have done a lot of great work. And I'll hand it over to Deb first and then Jane, and then y'all can pass it back to me.
Real quick,
Mm-hmm.
and this is for all the speakers, but you, because I'm gonna actually give it back to you real quick, Damon. I'd like to hear a little bit about your personal relationship to this work as well. Why you do it.
because the elders told me to. That's not, but no, I actually came into the space in Kepler as a young entrepreneur in high school. I've always been a creative, and then when I found out I can make money for doing Bugs Bunny drawings in the 5th grade, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna stick with this for a little while. And it's been many incarnations, but I am a designer, a creative. It's kind of God-given, and I've used that to learn about entrepreneurship. A lot of tough lessons about entrepreneurship, but nonetheless, I do think it is. M told me this a long time ago when I was in high school in like 1998. If you learn to get paid for what you love to do, you never have a job a day in your life. He was lying a little bit, but it got me to the point, or either that or I'm not really doing what I love to do. But anyway, it got me to a point where it is a certain sense of autonomy, freedom, and also a certain sense of responsibility that comes with it. And so for me, it's really just sharing my lessons in my mid-40s with young, up and coming, and young is, young in spirit. So all entrepreneurs, and I serve entrepreneurs. I mentor a lot. As a matter of fact, I have open hours every Monday and Wednesday, and I'll drop the Calendly link in there, but we do all kinds of sorts of stuff from TA to, hey, how do I get some money? How do I set up the LLC? Anything you want to talk about business. Hey, I'm so alone as an entrepreneur. Don't nobody understand me. Like we can cry about all that. And just get some good sound advice. And then if I can't help you, there's somebody in our community, in the Kepler community, that I can point you to, or go along that way. But yeah, my entrepreneurial journey started in 1996, maybe. And I've just been on that road for forever, feels like. So you want any more dirt about me, Chin, or is that good enough?
Nah, man, that was perfect.
All right,
I release you to pass it.
I'll pass it to Deb. Same question. How did you end on this road?
You want that first or last, or does it matter?
It doesn't. However you want to serve it up.
It doesn't matter at all.
Okay. So I'm the executive director of the Indiana Cooperative Development Center. We are a nonprofit serving the state of Indiana and providing technical assistance, education, and to a certain degree, advocacy about the co-op business model. I've been at the center since 2006. We were incorporated in 2006. We had one director prior to my arrival. Prior to that, I was on the board of the organization. So I've been around for a little while with ICDC. We work with literally any group of people who want to start a co-op. And it can be two folks who are sitting around in their living room having a conversation about, well, I have this issue, and the other person says, well, hey, I have the same issue. Well, maybe we can work together to come up with a solution. And then from there, that idea grows, bring more people in to the discussion. And that's kind of how co-ops start. It's built around a shared need, whatever that need happens to be. And we've worked with quite a few ag co-ops. Don't do a lot of work with co-ops, would love to see that happen. Have also done quite a bit in the food co-op space. Housing is a huge need, so we put some emphasis on housing this year. Childcare is another huge issue, so we've done some webinars around that topic. Prior to, well, I guess why co-ops? I worked in small business development prior to coming to ICDC. And when you work in the entrepreneurship space, you're working typically with an individual who has a dream, who has a vision, who has an idea, and you help that person realize that vision or that dream. The co-op space, you're working with a much larger group of people, and a lot of times, you've heard the old adage, when the group work is bigger than the sum of the parts of the individual parts. So co-ops are like that. They really are a vehicle to solve all kinds of problems at an individual level, at a community level, and at a much larger level than that. So I like the idea that people come together and resolve their own problems, their own issues. They come up with a solution that works for them. It's not someone from the outside coming in saying, hey, we know what's best for you, when really they don't. It's the people who are in that community or have those situations or those issues who are best able to come up with a solution that works for them. So I would say that's probably that's what drives me. And it's co-ops also are, from where I sit, an opportunity for not only personal empowerment, but community empowerment, and then again on a larger level. So I will turn it over to Jane.
Thanks, Deb. I'm Jane Ellery. I'm actually, I retired from a 20-year career as a professor at Ball State. My background is actually in public health and community well-being. And it's interesting, over the years, my research suggested that the democratization of everything is going to help improve health and well-being. And in about 2017, a mutual friend of Deb's and mine, who was at the time a visiting professor at Ball State, introduced us, and I realized that so many of the well-being, community well-being principles that I was working toward with my students and my research were very consistent with the cooperative principles. And Deb convinced me I should join her board about that time. And I've really, really enjoyed getting to know Deb and getting to understand what cooperatives look like. And interestingly, I did retire from Ball State in May of 2022, and I've moved to rural Indiana now, in southern Indiana. And one of my goals is that the county that I'm living in, Jackson County, becomes one of the first cooperative counties where we've got lots and lots of businesses that are cooperative in nature and lots of other opportunities. So we're looking to do some cool things in this county as well, because I just think it's important for the health and well-being of our communities and our country. I'll pass it back to you, Damon.
Thank you.
Real
Oh,
quick.
go ahead.
First, thank you, Damon, Jane, and Deb, for those introductions. I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to present for us today, but I do want to give some of these our new guests that have joined an opportunity to check in. Looks like we've got a bit of a second wave here. Maybe we'll start with Alvin, just number, color, and the check-in question was, what was your favorite board game coming up?
Hey, Shane. Hey, everybody. Feeling like 9. Like cerulean blue. And my favorite game growing up was Mousetrap, with all the little gadgets. And I don't even know if we played a full game of Mousetrap ever, but just setting it up and setting it off was like the most fun.
Yeah.
And I'll kick it back to you for whoever else has.
Yeah. I'll give it to Mimi.
Hey y'all, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm in the same room as someone else on the call. Okay, hello. I'm feeling like a 8.5, like a peach color, and mine would be Rummy Cube. My family played the game together, and if you play Rummy Cube, you like have your own tiles. And you have to have a certain number of, I'll just call it matches, like go down on the board, and everyone's trying to like go down. So you can play on the board and you win by getting rid of all your tiles. My gramps had this move where he would hold all of his tiles until the very end, and then he would go all out in one turn and win the whole game. It was so funny. He would do that all the time. So I just have to shout out Gramps and say Rummy Cube, and then I'll pass it back inside.
Let's give it to Leo.
Hey,
or,
yeah,
oh,
Leo. Sorry, I was AFK. Um, I'm Leo. Sitting at about 3 today, but we're living. So Heather Gray, and the best board game objectively is Clue.
who's great? Who's great? Let's hear from Eric.
I am on the road, so I'm not going to video, but it's good to be with everybody today. I am an 8 and gray. It's very sort of cloudy. The cloud is making its way all the way down to the ground today. And Clue was a good one. I hadn't thought of that. I was going to say Stratego.
And Kylie, if you want to take us home.
Hi. I'm feeling like an 8 today, and a kind of greenish color, maybe like a more muted green. And I really like the game Settlers of Catan.
Good answer. All righty, I'll pass it back to Damon. Thank you all very much.
I'm sure I was muted. Thanks, Chan. And again, this is Mumbo Jumbo, so you can interject, ask questions as you feel free. I am going to share my screen. I hope that it works. Can everybody see and hear?
Yep, I see it and hear you.
Great. Give me just a second to make sure. For some reason, I can't see everybody else. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
I can't see a show of hands or faces or anything
Yes.
like that. So,
You can see it.
all right. So at Kepler, we do a lot of community wealth building, but first and foremost, we're a learning organization, self-included. So this journey into cooperative economics is one that we're all learning from, but getting a lot of great information. I think maybe a little bit prior to COVID, we had a book study session on collective courage with Dr. Jessica Nimhart, who's one of the foremost pros, sages, gurus of cooperative development, particularly how it's empowered Black and Brown communities through the history of America. And so for us, it only made sense to continue that study and that journey. And what that looks like for us is community conversations about cooperative economics. So this is the first part in what we'll call, let's say, a 4-part conversation about it every month. But we're going to start with cultivating. Second one would be seed, third, nurture, and then grow. So cultivating cooperative communities. We can call those anything: social enterprises, collective, mutual aid organizations, communal living, consortiums, susus, borrowing some money from grandma, et cetera, et cetera. And I have issues. So community wealth building for Kepra. Throughout history, Black and Brown enterprises have been the engine for employment in emerging communities. Cooperative economics is the core pillar in community wealth building. It means to build and maintain our own stores, shops, institutions, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. Think of one community-based organization and or your own. How are they or you currently serving, collaborating with, and impacting your community? How does this make you feel? And is it in line with your purpose, which a lot of our work deals in purpose? I am going to come out of screen share mode because I like to see people's response, and I can't see anything this way. And I don't know what happened and why it's doing that. Just still don't know. And so what that looks like at Kepra, it's a lot of things that are forming, shaping, merging, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of times when we talk about community wealth building, we talk about 5 pillars, a lot more than just financial capital, but social capital, intellectual capital, cultural capital, financial capital, and spiritual capital, taking inspiration from the Nguza Saba principles: unity, community, reliance, and determination, collective ownership, collective work, purpose, culture, vision. Those are all things that are incorporated, encapsulated in cooperative work and moving forward with the community, et cetera, et cetera. So we have programs like Alchemy, which is a incubator accelerator program. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and we pretty much have that cohort once a year. And the Kepra Integrated Fund, which is spearheaded by Nicholas and Pombana, who's on the call today, but that's our integrated fund to raise capital to support local entrepreneurs in BIPOC and underrepresented communities. And a bunch of different other programs and initiatives, Octavia's Visionary Campus, our 17-acre urban farm and community space, which I think next weekend we're having a national convening. It's going to be a good time. We're going to call it a festival with the Climate Justice Alliance. It's going to be all kind of good stuff. So please come out and attend. Also, our Growing Good in the Hood program, community gardens, culinary classes, our community controlled food initiative spearheaded by Mimi and others in the community, Cafe Creative, our community land trust behind Alvin, Nicholas, and other people in our community. And I mentioned it earlier, but our Climate Justice Alliance. Those are just a few of the ways in which we move collective work forward internally as Kepra and as community. So what is a cooperative? The International Cooperative Alliance defines cooperatives as people-centered enterprises owned, controlled, and run by and for their members to realize a common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations. Cooperatives allow people to take control of their economic future because they're not owned by shareholders. They're owned by the members that work in the cooperative and that buy from the cooperative. The economic and social benefits of their activities stay in the communities where they are established. Cooperatives are notorious for keeping money in the community. We know that that's an issue in BIPOC communities. Profits generated are either reinvested in the enterprise or returned to the members. So just because you're doing a cooperative does not mean you're signing up to be broke. A lot of people don't know, but cooperatives are kind of synonymous. There's, I believe, over 3 million cooperative organizations employing somewhere north of 280 million people across the globe, which is like 10% of the workforce. So cooperatives are out and about, but for some reason, they aren't as popular as for-profits in a sense. So some of the popular co-ops we may know about are Ocean Spray, Associated Press, Best Western, which I didn't know Best Western was a co-op until recently, REI, Navy Federal Credit Union, State Farm, Sunkist are just a few cooperatives. One other interesting fact, co-ops remain in business longer and are more resilient in economic downturns than other kinds of businesses. 21% of traditional businesses fail in their first year, where only 10% of cooperatives fail in their first year. So what is a cooperative? We have a short video, 1 of 3. So buckle down. We're going to watch some videos before we get into some nitty-gritty conversation. But one of the major things about cooperatives are the principles of cooperatives. So I'll push play so we can watch that.
It's the connection with the people we serve that makes the future of electric cooperatives so bright. That's why we need to do everything we can to ensure that our members recognize they are part of something special. How can that be achieved? By staying true to the foundation on which we have stood for close to 75 years. Our co-op values and the 7 cooperative principles. Those principles are: 1, voluntary and open membership. Everyone in the service territory is welcome to be a member. 2, democratic member control. Every member has a say in every major decision. and board members are elected from and by the membership. 3. Member economic participation. Co-op members put equity into the cooperative, and all are allocated their fair share of any surpluses. 4. Autonomy and independence. Cooperatives are self-reliant and self-governed organizations, which gives them their spirit of independence. 5. Education, training, and information. Cooperatives educate members, elected representatives, and the public, particularly young people and opinion leaders, about the nature and benefits of cooperatives and about using energy wisely and safely. 6. Cooperation among cooperatives. Although each electric co-op is independent and locally based, there are more than 900 electric co-ops in 47 states serving more than 42 million consumers. By working together, this becomes a powerful national network of expertise and resources that all co-ops can use to be more effective. And finally, number 7, concern for community. Members come together through their cooperative to focus not just on their own needs, but on those of the community at large. What it comes down to is this: when you are a member of an electric cooperative, you are connected, you have a voice, you can make an impact. And the role of the cooperative leaders is to ensure members stay connected to their cooperative and feel their voices are heard. NRECA, your national rural.
So
It's the
stop
connection
right
with
there.
the people we serve.
Stop right there. Did everybody else see? Because I didn't see anything.
I saw all of it.
Please don't tell me
Did
that.
you?
Okay, so some
I
people
don't know
saw.
how I managed not to
Yeah,
see.
I got it.
Ooh, you scared me, Miss Paulette. I'll
Well,
send you the video.
Him couldn't see it. Him couldn't see it no way. So I'm sitting over here with him. I went back and forth. I sure missed it. Well, send it to me and I'll look at it after the fact.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So those are the 7 principles of cooperatives, which are great principles. They actually fall in line with Nguzo Saba and a lot of the principles and things and culture that we try to communicate and model in community wealth building here at Kepra.
You got a question, Leo?
Yeah, I was wondering, under this framework, would something like a workers' union count as a cooperative, or are we talking about a different kind of cooperative right now?
Yeah, and so I use the word cooperative loosely. There are legal structures, and they are different legal structures based on different whatever state you're in. So some are more loose and more open. A union can definitely be a cooperative. A LLC, you can actually operate an LLC cooperatively. So the answer is yes. Great question. Keep them coming. Did you have a follow up?
Well, no, I just want a point of clarity, but in the context of what the ICDC and Kepra is focused on is cooperative businesses. So a union is not a business, right?
Yeah, it would be a member organization.
So let me confuse you a little bit more when
Thank
you're talking about unions. So say for instance, and looking in there are a number of different types of consumer cooperatives like food co-ops. And some of those larger food co-ops, their employees are unionized. And they have, as part of their union contract, they have representation on the board. So
5:30, there's a start now.
so there's definitely some overlap there, but a union just in and of itself isn't a cooperative, but cooperative businesses can have their workers organized as a union. Does that help?
Yeah, so we're just talking about a cooperative in this case has to provide a service, be a business.
Yes, service or a
Gotcha.
product.
That helps, thanks.
Great. And again, keep them coming. I'm not even sure. Am I still sharing screen?
You are not still sharing your screen.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Sweet. Again, keep them coming.
I'll ask Deb and maybe she can share with us and I guess I'll say maybe locally in the state. So in Indianapolis and Indiana, what does the cooperative landscape look like in terms of businesses?
Can I pause real quick? Because I think we're going to get there. So can we put that question on pause or remember that? Because that's what this conversation is about, is the cooperative ecosystem. It's probably actually the next slide. But that's a great question. So I'm gonna share screen. So we talked a little bit about cooperative, some of the principles, what makes a cooperative, how loosely cooperatives are defined from state to state. But one of the bigger things that I've learned just from research and sitting with ICDC and talking with others like Co-op Dayton, Co-op Cincy, East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative in Oakland, is that what's most important is cultivating a cooperative ecosystem. Cooperative ecosystem is a tangible, deliberate, thoughtful, and integrated system of people, policies, practices, and institutions that convene for the support and development of enterprises that are owned, controlled, and accountable to members of the community in which they exist. It may comprise tasks of research and convening, business development, education and outreach, assets and operations, legal, governance and technical assistance, and financing and fundraising. So when we think of cooperative ecosystems, one that sticks out is the Cleveland model. We talk about deserts in their community. And one of the main things that the Cleveland model did, Evergreen Cooperatives, they created a fund. They also brought on anchor institutions within their own communities. And they build up I believe it was a number of 3 cooperatives, which they supported in that effort. Deb or Jane, or anybody else for that matter that is familiar with the Cleveland model, definitely feel free to interject or add any points of clarity on the Cleveland
Well, I
model.
guess I'll say, and I think when I used to work at another nonprofit when this first was occurring, and one of the key aspects of it was I guess you would say, institution commitment. So the Evergreen Cooperative ended up partnering with, I think it was university or hospital, I'm not sure who the partner was, to provide services, laundry, and I can't remember what other things they provided, but that was a key aspect of helping to get that launched and, providing opportunities to people in the community for employment.
Great, yeah, definitely. That was one of their first worker cooperatives, was their laundry service. I believe they also use that from an impact standpoint with re-entry into the workforce, and that's grown. I believe University Hospital is still the laundry service's biggest customer and one of the anchor institutions. So that's a great point.
They also have a lot of support from the city government
as well. Thanks for that. And there's a short video on the next screen about
Eric has his hand up.
Oh, I can't see. So yeah, I'm gonna lean on you, Chin, if people have questions.
Yeah,
Eric,
just building a little bit on I was just going to say a little bit more about the Cleveland model. Like, a key part of it is to treat these institutions in the local area that have some kind of public mandate as the core driver of the economy, and just recognizing that they would often be outsourcing services from beyond their immediate neighborhoods where there were underserved communities, where there were opportunities for economic development. So to create worker-owned businesses within that community that was local to these anchor institutions, and then drive the revenue that made the businesses sustainable through the engaging this range of larger scale institutions that have a public mandate, is a key component of the model.
Hey, Eric, could you elaborate on what do you mean by public mandate?
Well, I think you probably have, I could look it up, just sort of a list of the core group of institutions. So whether, if it's the hospital or the higher ed institution, or if they're receiving federal funding, or as you said, might be linked with the municipality, there's some, they're not just going to a private business that happens to be in the area. They're going into institutional customers that have some direct relationship with the community, and a sort of a built-in incentive to enhance the quality of life in the community.
All right, thank you.
Great feedback. And that's the critical part of that work, because it's kind of leveraging systems that already exist. So thanks for sharing that, Eric. And I'm gonna make sure I get your information.
Well, and let me add really quickly too, like universities and hospitals that are nonprofits at that level, they're publicly required to contribute the equivalent of what they're not paying in taxes to the service of a community. So it's real important for them to be part of the overall plan in that public thinking.
Thank you, Jane. I didn't know that. So I'm gonna push play on this. Hopefully we can hear it, see it.
Like many American cities, Cleveland was once a center for industry and good jobs. But the factories closed up or moved away and took the jobs with them. Today, over half the children in Cleveland live below the poverty line. Without jobs, poor neighborhoods get poorer, and disinvestment, lack of educational opportunity, and barriers to employment compound themselves. How can we bring jobs back to cities like Cleveland and keep them there? We need to work with what we've got, and a city like Cleveland has got a lot of world-class hospitals and universities. These are anchor institutions. Large, non-profit institutions which are anchored to the city and very unlikely to move away. These anchors are the economic powerhouses of the city, spending billions of dollars every year on the goods and services they use every day. But a lot of that money is spent far outside the city. How can we use the billions of dollars anchors already spend to help lift neighboring communities out of poverty? The Cleveland model points toward a solution. Anchor institutions want to make their operations more sustainable, and this is an opportunity to create new local businesses to fill these new needs. But we need to make sure that these businesses stay rooted in the communities that need the jobs the most. In the Cleveland model, these businesses are worker cooperatives, owned by their own workers. Each worker owner has an equal share and a voice in the way the company is run. Democratic control of the company keeps jobs local. It's hard to imagine the workers at a company voting to eliminate their own jobs because it'd be cheaper to hire lower paid employees somewhere else. And democratic ownership of the company keeps the profits local too. Rather than flowing out of the city to an owner in the suburbs or to some big corporation's offshore bank account, the wealth generated by the business is distributed broadly to the community members whose work makes that wealth possible. Keeping wealth local means that more people can buy more things in the community, which creates more jobs and builds more wealth. The anchor institutions buy things like clean power and local produce from the cooperatives. This was money they needed to spend anyway, but now they not only get the sustainable goods and services they need, they are also helping build jobs in their neighboring communities. And when the cooperatives have long-term contracts to supply major local institutions, they can be more certain that their businesses will thrive. They can even take these contracts to the bank if they need credit to help their business grow. It's a win-win situation. These cooperatives themselves cooperate. They are linked together by a larger nonprofit. The worker owners promise never to sell their company to make a quick buck, and in return, the nonprofit helps their cooperative business succeed, providing technical assistance and strategic guidance. The nonprofit also operates a revolving loan fund, which channels investment from anchor institutions, local foundations, and government programs to the cooperatives. As the cooperatives thrive, they pay back into the revolving fund, which eventually provides the money to help launch yet new cooperatives, creating even more jobs. If it can work in Cleveland, it can work in your city. With cooperatives in Cleveland operating the nation's largest urban greenhouse and installing its largest urban solar field, people are paying attention. The Cleveland model is spreading, with worker co-ops connected to their local anchor institutions springing up in cities across the country.
So I'll stop it there and then open the floor for any questions or anybody that wants to add a little bit more. Oh my goodness, a little bit more information or context about the Cleveland model.
I'll just say real quick, this video kind of reminds me about Leo's earlier comment or question, that question of like whether or not workers cooperatives count as cooperatives. And I think that like what this like specific video like highlighted really clearly is that like for a cooperative ecosystem, you like need models like that and other models like that all kind of like have that like synergized goal of like sustaining, you know, their communal network. So I don't know, I just think it's like it's really cool. I think it like holds a lot of room for a lot of like different ideas and like different ways of organizing and sharing power, just kind of like you know, in tandem with each other. Eric, your hand is still up. Did you have another question?
Nope, just trying to lower it. Just a little slow on the Zoom today. Sorry about that. I
All
did put a
good,
little
thank
bit more on the anchor institutions in the chat in case people are interested.
And so
yeah, Pambana, yeah, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I'm wondering if Deb and can answer the question that I raised earlier now.
That's a really good question, Pambana, and I don't have a specific answer, and there is a reason for that. So as Damon mentioned earlier, every state's laws for cooperatives are just a little bit different. And in Indiana, you can register as in particular segments like an ag co-op or a rural electric or a telephone co-op, insurance co-op, credit union. But then there's this big whole category where a lot of consumer co-ops fit that don't fit in any of those sectors. I say all that to say that it's really hard to track the actual number of co-ops because you don't actually have to register as a cooperative to operate as a cooperative in Indiana. As Damon mentioned earlier about LLCs, you can be legally an LLC but operate in a cooperative fashion. And it's an issue not only in Indiana, but in the entire country. There was a study done in about 2009 by the University of Wisconsin. And believe it or not, to my knowledge, it was the first study of the economic impact of cooperatives. At that time, Indiana had around 350, maybe 400 cooperatives. And in a state this size, we could certainly have a whole lot more. But there really is not a good way to track. Now, and Eric, you might be able to shed some light on this too. If I'm not mistaken, when the census did their latest business census, they actually added a line to indicate whether or not you are cooperative. So I'm hoping that that will yield some additional information. But the economic impact of cooperatives is really difficult in this country to track because we don't have the mechanisms in place.
I believe Leo, your hand's raised.
You got a question, Leo?
Yeah, about what you said, Deb. The fact that cooperatives don't have to register, obviously, excuse me, obviously makes them difficult to track. But I was curious, is that a good thing or a bad thing for cooperatives? If they had to register, would that make it harder to establish a cooperative, or would that be a good thing if they had to register because it would just make it easier to track?
Well, I'm not saying they don't have to register. I'm just saying that it's difficult in some industries. For instance, a food co-op could be organized in Indiana as a corporation and not tick that box about being a co-op. So it's not that they don't have to register, they do, but the mechanisms to register are not what they should be. And I think it would make a huge difference, especially as we work with our elected officials and we're trying to get money to help establish cooperatives, being able to show how many co-ops there are, what their economic impact is, how many employees they employ, what their, the money that's created in that co-op ecosystem, I think would definitely help that whole conversation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Thanks again, Eric. Thanks for the insight, Deb and everybody else. And so the logical question is why co-ops and why now? And I'll read through this and then open the floor up for those that want to add to why co-ops, why now. Cooperatives allow people to take control of their economic future. Profits stay within the enterprise or return to the members. I believe they call it surplus. Co-ops increase ownership amongst owners, which can increase wealth creation in marginalized communities. Co-ops increase local commerce, thus building more resilient communities. Co-ops champion social impact movements. A lot of times they are the forces behind social impact movements like food insecurity, housing, et cetera, et cetera. Co-ops increase learning in the communities they serve, and as a learning organization, we're all about that. This quick video. And it's the last video. So we're good.
A worker cooperative, or co-op, is like a business, only instead of being controlled by the boss's boss's boss, it is controlled democratically by the workers themselves. Every co-op has a constitution, or rather a set of bylaws, that everyone follows. While each co-op has different bylaws, they all have similarities. They might say something like this: a cooperative worker is also known as a member. Each member gets some share of the co-op's profit, and each member gets equal voting power when making decisions. Well, sort of. The issue with voting on every little decision is that there are so many to be made that it requires hours of meetings every day, leaving no time to actually do the things your co-op wants to do. So most cooperatives elect a board of directors to make some kinds of decisions, usually ones necessary for the co-op to operate, while other decisions still must be made democratically by all members. Usually bigger picture decisions like modifying the bylaws, accepting new members, or electing board members. Elections are held regularly so that any board member who abuses their power or otherwise runs things badly will be voted out. You and your coworkers can fire your boss. Imagine that. There's tons more to the bylaws, addressing things like the process behind board meetings, member meetings, decisions without meetings, consensus in voting, and how people get paid. Worker co-ops have an average pay ratio of 5-to-1. That means the highest earner makes 5 times more than the lowest earner. Compare that to traditional businesses with an average pay ratio of 320-to-1. One could make the case that people who take on more responsibility should be rewarded for it. But to what extent? Is anyone's time really worth 300 times more than mine? In worker cooperatives, we the people have real power in deciding what that ratio should be. In the United States, there are over 18 million businesses. And out of those, only about 500 are worker-owned and democratically run. One reason there are so few co-ops is that it's difficult for them to outcompete traditional businesses. Since co-ops tend to pay their workers more, offer more benefits, uphold a healthy work environment, and pay members for attending meetings, they tend to have to raise their prices to stay afloat. These prices don't compete well with traditional businesses, whose prices are low because their workers aren't treated well. But despite this, some co-ops survive anyway. Some have found untapped markets where competition hasn't set in. Some are in areas where people want to and are able to spend more to support co-ops. Some co-ops have made compromises to their democracy by hiring workers who aren't members. They can't vote, don't get any shares of the co-op, and are at the full mercy of the members and the board. Under the current economic system, the more democratic co-ops generally are at a disadvantage. So do cooperatives stand a chance? My answer to this question is, I don't know, but it's worth exploring the possibility. Cooperatives are more resilient in areas where there are other cooperatives and low unemployment, because in those areas, traditional businesses tend to lose employees. But it's hard to start a lot of cooperatives at once, let alone start just one. But if we could reach a point where co-ops dominated, they would have some serious revolutionary potential. If co-ops become diverse enough in their production, it's possible that they could network together and make coordinated decisions. Each co-op in a given area could elect a representative to have meetings about what each co-op needs and what surpluses are available, and decide how to distribute them. Each co-op could get their production materials from another without relying on money. There's no reason to stop there. The network of co-ops could also start directly distributing goods to its members, diminishing their need for money. After all, what good is money if your needs are being provided for? As people rely on money less and less, traditional businesses would get weaker and weaker. Cooperatives would take their place, one by one, until all of society's productive forces are worker-owned, democratically operated, and oriented not around profit, but around the betterment of humanity. We have a lot of work to do if we want to make this vision a reality, and different people have different roles to play. If you don't have the means by which to start a co-op, you can try to find an existing one to join. Or if there aren't any around, start conversations about the concept. If you know a lot of people and are highly connected with your local community, and you're privileged enough to have the time, you might be able to pull together resources to start one. If you're a business owner, you can transition your business into a cooperative. Finding a craft that can also support other cooperatives helps to form the very beginnings of a mutually supportive network that could become the new organizational basis for all production. Thank you for watching this video. I do not run ads, and I never will, so if you
Great. So they had a lot of good reasons, great reasons why. I think one of the main ones for me was that equal footing, one member, one vote, which I'm sure you can shake that up, but I think that's probably as close to democracy as you're going to get. But I'll shut up and hear from other people, those that are interested, those that are inquiring, those that have been through the process. Why co-ops? Stop share so I can see people's faces. Why the interest? Why move forward on them?
Well, I'll share that, and growing up, I had my dad, well, I'll say was married a couple of times, but we were a low income family and we were impacted by, not having enough money for food or deciding if you're gonna pay rent or if you're gonna keep the utilities on or if you're gonna eat and those kind of things. And I didn't know anything about a cooperative. And it wasn't until I got in college and I got introduced to the what I call the nationalist community here in Indianapolis that, promoted self-determination, self-reliance, and, pooling our income, resources, skills, and talents. So to me, I guess I would say I learned the power of it by participating initially in a food cooperative, and then, how it can help one to reduce the cost of food for you. Also, how it helps, again, like they talk about putting money back into the local economy because you're buying from local farmers and producers and things like that. So you're helping to support them, and then they're providing you a price that's cheaper than if you go to the grocery store where it has to be marked up, even though grocery stores have very thin margins. But again, in the context of, and then, a lot about what Jessica Nepcourt Garden writes about is, to me, cooperatives also foster community because one is people coming together to address a need that they have, learning how to be in community together, how to make decisions, how to move forward. And then also, it's rewarding and enriching in the sense that they're contributing to the work and providing that product, that service. So to me, I feel like, there's just a number of different reasons why cooperatives make sense, but it does seem to be very hard. One, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of awareness about cooperatives here in Indianapolis or Indiana, and it does seem to be very difficult to get people who are business oriented to think about that model versus more I think the single or family control kind of business. And I'm really I like that last part. I don't know how we get to it about you know, if we can get to the point where we have enough cooperatives and they provide what you need, we don't need money. Because for me, you know, for people, if they can be a part of cooperative and contribute, they either get money or they get products, and that gives everybody an opportunity to participate. And so, you know, typically in under-resourced communities, high unemployment. And so to me, to find ways that we can engage them and give them opportunities to engage our community, work together, give them opportunities to benefit from and be a productive, and I don't want to say they're not productive, because a lot of people who are under-resourced to me are the most resourceful, but to begin to figure out how to get around this thing about homelessness or, you know, food insecurity without it being tied to, if you don't have money, then you have to be poor and suffer. So that's what I'll say.
No, great points. Great points.
I guess this is like kind of a question. I think that like the power that co-ops hold, especially when they talk about like, you know, that like dream scenario of like the cooperative ecosystem functioning at like full efficiency, where they can like trade products and services with each other and create their own like, you know, self-sustaining economy, you know. That's really powerful. But I think that like, you know, I think that the challenge like in co-ops comes with like the challenge and like community building period. You know, how do you organize in a way that keeps things democratic? How do you organize in a way that like, you know, holds people accountable, you know, while still like pushing forward, you know, and still maintaining like the ties within the organization, you know, the relationships. So how do you, you know, is there a way to navigate that?
That's a great question. That's actually our first question. So I'm gonna open it up to everybody.
I will jump in on that. Oh, I don't know if someone's talking. My
Uh,
sound.
Yeah, thank you, Mimi. Overall, what ingredients are needed in cultivating a cooperative community, in line with what Shannon was asking? And anybody feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I was gonna build on what Chin said, because I mean, this whole conversation, I am definitely thinking about like the cultural aspects. And, you know, to Chin's question, this just makes me think, how do you build a culture of collaboration and trust? How do you build a culture of accountability? And like, yeah, I think building cultures where you have those relationships in place with trust and accountability is critical. And I'll just give like one small example of how we do that at Kepra, which I would say is, Kepra to me is like a solid co-op. And, you know, built off of relationships and passion and very much art of the start model, like just out of the mud. And, you know, sustained for 20 years in this formal sense as Kepra Institute. And I'll just give one example of, you know, how we build a culture of relationships. We do this check-in, and it may seem like a small thing, but that's a practice we put in place to support a culture of relationship building. And we take that time at the start of all of our sessions to make some time to focus on the people in the room and us getting to know each other. And for me, I can see a line from that to successful cooperative. And I also know that like that type of thing is contagious, because I know Eric, who's also on the call, he runs a cohort with the Food Finance Institute, and we were joining those and getting to know Eric. And at some point he learned our check-in ritual, and then he started using that in that space, and they do it every time. And I think from my experience, it's helped build more relationships in that space. So that's just one small example, but yeah, to me, that cultural component is critical. And then how do you ritualize practices that build cultures around relationships, trust, and accountability?
That's a great point, Mimi. I know we do practice, we preach and practice relationships, and just from some of the research, that was one of the major things around building cooperative ecosystems is organizing, maintaining, providing safe spaces for human development and, more importantly, relationship development. For Jane and Deb, or anyone in the space actually, are there any examples of, I guess, for lack of a better word, on the city scale, what that organizing looks like, and what that organizing may look like over time?
Well, I may not answer that one directly, Damon, but I wanted to build a little bit on what Mimi said. And that's exactly what brought me from this community well-being into thinking about cooperatives as one of the business opportunities. And one of the things I've heard Deb say, and she can expand on this, is a lot of times we go into these enterprise thinking and new adventures together, really making sure that we do build the trust, that we do keep that going. But there's one co-op that has actually, they realized after they got going that they weren't keeping that going, so they ended up folding. And so being intentional on creating relationships and keeping those connections and continuing to reach out and make sure that you know each other and have that trust is so important. And that's another reason why this particular way of doing business is difficult. There are so many benefits, but just like any business, there are also so many things that you have to keep working on. And it is work. It is something that you have to intentionally continue to develop in order to keep the process going. And it also has to be agile. It's not always going to look the same. Sometimes life changes a little and you're going to have to adapt to how things are moving forward. And that's important to keep in mind as well.
Great points. One of the things too in that group that folded, one of the words that really stood out to me was just maintaining relationships through the different phases of the growth of the business. And what they said that they got away from was that as organizers, as relationship builders, they lost sight of one of the main responsibilities, which was leveraging momentum and taking momentum and growing momentum towards a movement. So cooperatives are a great platform, exercise place for movement making, movement building, and movement sharing. And I think a lot of times, or at least in my experience, when you're starting a business, growing a business is less about the movement and more about the money to a certain extent. But that was one of the things that really stood out for me, is when you're organizing, building relationships through every part of building out an ecosystem and building out cooperatives, is you want to stay key to the movement and what the movement is about, because that's where the momentum is going to come from. Eric, I saw your hand was up. Sorry about that.
No worries. I think I can do the video now. Let's just see if that works. And I will lower my hand right now so I just don't have the opportunity to forget. So just two quick things. I wanted to build a little bit on what Mimi said and this sort of getting social and cultural memes, for lack of a better word, and then replicating them in other circumstances. And I said more about this after I visited in March, about sort of the power and meaning of the check-in process that you folks use. But that as I've used it across other programs, one of the things that we've seen is that people might come into a meeting checking in as like a 5 or a 6, and by the middle or the end of the meeting be switching to like an 8 or a 9. We've been calling that upregulating. And so it gives us like a way to actually look at how the group is feeding off each other and building each other's sense of resilience and strength in real time. But the broader theme with co-ops is, I think it's really interesting and potent that when they talk about the definition of a co-op, like the statement of co-op identity, that they don't just say meeting the financial needs, but it's also the social and cultural needs. And there's a lot of both power and opportunity in that side of things. And it gives a way to say, like, we're owned by consumers, but we think the employees, the workers are really important. And so we want to structure this to benefit the workers, even if that's not necessarily something that you would do if you were just purely looking at a financial decision. So I think there's a lot of leverage in the social and cultural needs as being built into the DNA of why and how people would build a co-op. And then the second quick point I wanted to make was that the ecosystem building can move in two directions. It can really take a long time, like for a community to build a cooperative grocery store, and that's bringing the community together around something that they want and need, and then going through the steps to demonstrate commitment, show financial engagement, and then be able to bring in other capital to be able to hire a general manager or have a store or whatever. But then also, as was mentioned in that video, co-ops can work together and be like even incorporated as a federated cooperative. And there's several great examples of this where like the amount of money it costs to get the thing that you put in your store is much lower because you're in a cooperative with other similar stores around the country or around the region. And so it can really work in both directions. And kind of the extreme examples of this that people tend to bring up are in like Italy and Emilia Romagna, or in Spain with Mondragon. And there are challenges why you can't just sort of wave a magic wand and do that in the US. But the basic idea that both bringing the community together to form one cooperative is a big movement building opportunity. And then to have co-ops think about how to work together in a region or whatever geographic area also really can create a lot of leverage that makes big benefits for each individual co-op.
Eric, a follow-up question. You said there's certain or some, I'm paraphrasing, but some reasons why you can't do that in the US. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I think this might be a great Deb question. Eddie, I'll answer it too, but I'm just curious, like if what incentives or legislative infrastructure might make it easier for Mondragon or Emilia Romagna to do what they do that is not as simple to imitate in the US. Deb, is that something you've reflected on in the past?
Well, I definitely think that the legislative atmosphere doesn't help, but there's another component to that, and that's a huge one. But this country was built on, we came here because we didn't like where we were. There was a lot of restrictions, we came here for religious freedom and those kinds of things. But in so doing, we've gotten so wrapped up in being individuals, and I can do whatever it is I need to do by myself, as opposed to thinking about how much more we could do if we just worked with each other, if we cooperated with each other. And Jane would be a better person to talk about this, but at our very basic nature, human beings cooperate all the time. It may not be in a business environment, but even little kids on a playground have to negotiate and cooperate with each other if they want to pull together, say, a basketball team to play during recess. So that's always happening, but somewhere along the line, we get it into our heads that we're better off going it alone. And there's, in some states, and like for instance, Minnesota, I have a colleague in Minnesota, I tell him all the time that I really envy him, because that state, first of all, they have good laws for cooperatives. They have foundations that specifically help support cooperatives. But the people who settled that state were a lot of Scandinavian countries who had a lot of co-op businesses in their home countries. They brought that thinking with them to this country. And so it's just a natural part of how they think about doing business. So I think there's lots of aspects to that. The legal and the kind of the policy perspective definitely makes a difference in how easy it is to establish co-ops and then starting to create that cooperative economy. But I think it also has to do with individuals being able to work together to to solve that situation. Like Eric, you were saying, whether it's social or there's a financial component or whatever that situation happens to be. I don't think it's as easy as saying there's one thing we could fix that would just make it really easy to create that cooperative economy. There's a lot of pieces. And so I think, starting small and working out, like Cleveland has done. Madison, Wisconsin has had some legislators who were very positive about the co-op model. They put some money in the state budget, or actually in the Madison budget. So I think it really, there's lots of factors that go into that, and you just have to, it's like you've heard the old adage about how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. You can't just, if we could wave a magic wand and just suddenly have a cooperative economy across the country, that would be awesome, but it's not that easy. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of effort and a lot of education to get there.
I think it really comes back to this, this conversation of the cultural piece, because when we talk about like economic obstacles, legislative and political obstacles, those are all reflections of like culture. And so I think that like, I definitely think that there's like a lot in this country that culturally tells people that they should be like, go it on their own, that they should operate as individuals. But at the same time, I think that there are a lot of cultures here in this country, cultures of people who maybe, did not come here willingly, or if they came here willingly, came here under duress, I guess you could say. And in those cultures, in those communities, I find that like not only just from this is my personal experience, and I think that there's research to back this up as well, but those like more communal cooperative models and like relationships are like easier to find and easier to leverage. And so I think there's like a lot to be said about, especially in those communities where those relationships already exist. I think Kepler is a good example of that. Kepler is an example of a community where those relationships and the cooperative spirit already existed, just like, Miss Fair talks about it all the time, growing up like in the segregated South, and how like people needed to rely on each other to survive in spaces like that. So I think that like a lot of communities, especially communities of color, already have a lot of those reflexes and impulses. It's just about like tapping into them and organizing them, and like helping people to see them for what they are. This is not just like, it's just what we do, but it's also like how we survive and how we build things as well.
Yeah, I'd add to that. In addition to that, I think maturely under-resourced communities often out of necessity work together more. You'll find houseless communities. There's a lot of shared activity going on. You'll find, a lot of times we don't look for it because we can't see it, because we're looking out of a particular cultural context. They can't see what's right there in front. So I definitely agree with your point about certain communities, cultural communities have always had some form of shared collaboration. Also we can either, to add to Deb's point about one bite at a time on the elephant, we might also organize 1,000 chihuahuas and eat the elephant all at one time.
Well, I think great point. Eric, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jane.
I was going to say real quick, I'd like to add also, those who are in power that are benefiting from the extractive way that our economy works now don't want to make it easy for us to cooperate. And we've got to help help all the rest of us overcome our feelings of, oh, I failed if I didn't do it on my own, because unfortunately, that's what we're raised to believe. And we have to make life a team sport again rather than something that we're expected to do individually.
And that 1% is not working by themselves.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say that like life is always a team sport, no matter how much money you make. Individualism is a myth, you know? Like you don't make billions of dollars without billions of people like behind you, supporting you and like making sure you succeed, you know? So I think that's another big part of it, you know, shifting the narrative about how we talk about like the way that resources are controlled and distributed in the first place. Nobody does it on their own. No
So
one
you
does
don't
it.
think that they're any self-made people?
Absolutely not. Everybody has parents.
And that made me think about, you know, as part of our, I don't know, mumbo jumbo or social media, we need to have like Mythbuster sessions where we start exploding.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Oh, so you think you built this business by yourself and your family alone?
Let's look at the facts.
We all need myths.
And so and Eric, I didn't know if you want to contribute or anybody else.
Yeah, I just, I think building on this Thousand Chihuahuas theme, I think is really central to, what makes a difference, because the advocacy side of it becomes really important if there is a cultural that then becomes legislative environment that isn't as encouraging as like Mondragon grew out of an educational community really, and then built into a really well integrated network of all kinds of cooperative businesses that then create better employment conditions. And there's a ripple effect once you get over a certain threshold of critical mass. And I talk a lot about the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, which is a network of cooperative enterprises across multiple states in the South. Advocacy is a key pillar of the way that they do their work, and you see it over and over again. And one of the just a specific example in terms of the U.S. and how structurally things can be challenged, and also you can get some wins. The Small Business Administration historically has had a tough time with access to cooperative enterprises to a lot of like loan guarantee programs. There's a lot of lowering cost of capital or making easier access to credit that the SBA is kind of a gatekeeper of, and they've been very concerned about the personal guarantee. There's one person who's at the end of the day going to take some kind of financial liability if something doesn't work. If you've got a cooperative enterprise with multiple owners, then that personal guarantee, there is no one person, and that has been used as a reason to exclude cooperatives from a range of programs like the 7A loan guarantee program that is a huge lever that we talk about all the time in Food Finance Institute for growing businesses in food and farm, but in many sectors. So that's an example of an ongoing challenge that's kind of rooted in the culture of a particular powerful segment of the government that would take a lot of advocacy, and there's been tons of advocacy and still hasn't really shifted yet. And contrasting that with the State Small Business Credit Initiative that was included in the ARPA legislation and administered through the Treasury, the worker cooperative sector was able to effectively advocate so that, if you want to buy a business and so you need money to get your equity share of a business and it's a private business, they don't want you to use the federal funds or the federal technical assistance money just so that you can buy a business. That's reasonable. But if you're converting a regular business to a worker-owned business so that the employees can become the owners together and move the business into the future, there are exceptions in that particular program, State Small Business Credit Initiative through Treasury, that does make it possible for worker-owned cooperatives to use that money for that purpose. So that's the other side of the story of what we've heard with SBA, where there was strong advocacy on a specific point over time that opened a door that made it more easy to form worker-owned cooperatives. So it can go both ways, but it really takes those 1,000 Chihuahuas to stay on those points to get those wins. Nobody gives it to you.
Thank you. Oh man, that's great information, and thank you for a new soundbite. 1,000 Chihuahuas.
Well, that was the alley hoop. I knew Eric was on the call. I knew I would toss that up. You go ahead and hoop it on down. Great work.
Slam dunk.
I really want to draw that. I got it at some point. It needs to be a draw.
Actually, eating the elephant.
Yeah, that was straight team ball right there.
And so again, on that, you know, we've heard advocacy, I've heard legislation, I've heard things of that nature. Playing devil's advocate, like, are there examples where you get around that? I heard like Eric mentioned conversion. I hear that a lot of times. It's almost like one of the new sales pitches of co-ops. Hey, baby boomers, convert, 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 convert. Are there, or even forming LLCs where potentially you could take out a loan as a signature on the loan, but still govern cooperatively based on your policies in your handbook? Are there ways to skate government's co-op or co-ops for capitalism? Is there a way to skate all that?
All right, officer.
Hey man, that's an offline conversation, G.
Theoretical ways.
Oh, okay.
Are there any theoretical ways? Yeah, I mean, like forming a co-op. So there's kind of this new form of co-ops. You got these platform co-ops, you got tech co-ops. I think there's conversation about what's the Ether? I forgot what it's called, but blockchain
yeah.
co-op, blockchain cooperatives. Can we just set up cooperatives in other states that are more cooperative friendly? Like, what is there any way to get around that?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. In fact, I was working with a group of architects who they're here, but our statutes aren't exactly the friendliest in the country. They organized in Colorado and just operate here in Indiana as a foreign corporation. So yeah, that's possible, which is a step, but where we want to get to are statutes that are friendly to cooperatives and that encourage the creation of cooperatives. And that takes a lot of advocacy and a lot of work on the part of a lot of people to educate our elected officials.
So are there like any nonprofits that are, I know, you know, you talk about federations like that are set up as 501c6s or whatever or whatever structure to advocate currently going on in Indiana?
There are in sectors, for instance, in the credit union sector, there's the Credit Union League, Indiana Credit Union League. So they lobby, they're a 501c6, so they're able to do that. So they, you know, talk to our legislators, both at the state and federal level, local level as well, about making sure that all the statutes that are in place to protect credit unions stay that way. But I don't off the top of my head know of something that goes across sectors. You'll see a lot of that in sector specific type of advocacy work. The only thing not in Indiana, the only thing I know at a federal level would be the National Co-op Business Association, which works across sectors. Then there's the Federation of Worker Co-ops, but again, they're looking specifically at worker co-ops, not co-ops in general. So there's not as much of that as there needs to be.
Any other thoughts on legislation, things around that nature, advocacy, et cetera, et cetera? Those are all great.
For mayor.
We are technically over time, so I think that we can maybe take these last few comments or questions as our bow on the
Ken,
conversation.
would you mind shouting out how to support the Kepler Institute? And then also Jessica Gordon Hartman, we did the Collective Courage book discussion facilitated by her. You can find all of those recordings on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, if you love cooperative so much, go to donate.kepler.org to support cooperative organizing in real time.
It's pretty good. Pretty good. Any other as we're being shut down? by the powers that be.
Not shut down. I just know people have other meetings.
Oh, okay. Are there any other points or anybody want to add anything?
Well, just so you know, before you lose the thread, I put a couple of links following up on the points that I made about the wins and challenges on the federal side using, as folks mentioned, the NCBA, National Cooperative Business Association, as sort of the conduit for the news.
Hey,
So
could
just
somebody
before you lose
copy
the thread.
chat? Can somebody copy the chat and email it to me, those links, please?
I got you.
Thank y'all.
I will also say real quick, in the spirit of cooperative organizing and promoting cooperatives, I have to let everyone know, even if you know already, we are less than, let me look at my calendar real quick, actually. We are almost less than 2 weeks away from the Climate Justice Alliance's convening here in Indianapolis, hosted by the Kepler Institute on Octavia's Visionary Campus. It's a gathering of representatives from almost 90 organizations from across the country, all dedicated to building community-centered solutions, supporting the frontline communities, like facing the effects of climate change. So along with the workshops and all the great internal work that we're going to be doing, there's also going to be plenty of events open to the community as well. Block party, documentary screening, concerts. So
And
yeah,
is there a link that you can drop into the chat for people to learn more?
there is, I think. Hang on.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We've been talking about bonfires and drums and murals and great food. Is going to be a lot of fun. It's actually on our newly acquired OVC campus. So for those who haven't come over to the South Side to check us out at the new urban farm, it's going to be a great coming out party. Festival, not party. I want to get in trouble.
Hang on, I'm having trouble finding the right link to drop in the chat at the moment, but I know there's information. We have, actually, I lied.
Take your time, no rush, other than the time limit that you're giving us. While Chan's looking for that, I will say we're going to continue the co-op conversation, maybe even talk more about cultivating, and then what are some of those initial seeds that need to be planted in the city of Indianapolis towards building cooperatives, and that'll be on September 22nd.
And then generally, Damon, it's the fourth Friday of the month for our
Yes,
conversation.
I've signed up for 4 Fridays, and that'll be the second one. So yes, 4 Fridays of every month. What is this? August, September, October, November. So we'll be doing 4 months into November. We're inviting a lot of guests that we mentioned earlier. Some of these organizations we've talked about, we're hoping that they'll join us just to share a little bit more experience in terms of some of the lessons learned from actually setting up cooperative ecosystems in their cities. Definitely going to invite Eric back. First time meeting you, Eric, and I'm happy I did. I can't buy any more time, Chin.
Okay. Okay. I got one more link and then I'm good. Okay.
All right.
Those are links to the Facebook events for the block party concert and the documentary screening that will be taking place during the convening. Thank you so much for your patience while I found those. Yeah, there's going to be plenty more information on our social media and our website as we get closer to those dates as well. So be on the lookout, but never too late to RSVP.
Great.
Too early.
Any closing comments, thoughts? Everybody brought them out at the same time. 1, 2, 3, go.
Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for everybody for contributing and asking questions and everything. It was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for including us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, folks. Have a great weekend.
Guys.